Hey guys, I'm Jason Horn. I'm a designer, occasional comic book creator, and lifelong comic book collector, and this is Longboxer, where I'm going to dive into my dusty old long boxes of newsprint comics and talk about some issues that have meant something to me over the years. And to start off, we're doing 100 Bats, where I'll read and discuss issues 400 through 500 of Batman. So that's 1986 through 1993, which is basically the entire time I collected comics as a kid. And that year of 1986 was a banner year for comics. We're talking Batman The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, Mouse, Daredevil Born Again, Byrne's Man of Steel, and Dark Horse Presents #1, the first comic published by Dark Horse. So each video in 100 Bats is going to be either a single issue, like today's video for issue 400, just going to be that single issue. But sometimes I'll probably do, the video could be a whole storyline. It just kind of depends on how interesting the comic is. Or, I'll probably go into depth more into the issues that I had when I was a kid, because those kind of had more of an impact on me. Also, I'm going to be sharing some pretty embarrassing artwork from when I was a kid. Just probably some Batman, X-Force, Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. If that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. So I grew up in Kentucky on a farm, and to say the least, we didn't have comic book stores, so a lot of the times I would get my comics at Walmart in these 3-packs. And so these have 3 issues in order, so that this one is still sealed. It has $3.97, $3.98, and $3.99. And one of the cool things is these packs came with these cards that had these uncut trading cards, images, mostly drawn by Jose Garcia Lopez. And they had all kinds of just great covers and great art with stats on the back explaining who everybody was. This is the way I was introduced to a lot of characters that I'd never heard of before. And this is the way I saw a lot of, I don't even think I knew that the Teen Titans existed until I saw the card that came with some of these comics. So one of the cool things about Batman 400 is that it's one of these anniversary issues. And this anniversary logo ran on DC Comics for years in the 80s. And I, for some reason, collected these. If it had this anniversary logo on it, I would dig it up out of a long box. And I got quite a few of these things. The logo changed a little bit over the years, but still kind of had that same look to it. And it ran in different titles too, Superman titles as well as Batman. And this issue, if you're not familiar with this issue, track it down. This is a Steranko cover on Superman 400. Just a crazy, much like Batman 400, just a crazy lineup in this of talent. Brian Bolland, Howard Chaykin, Klaus Janson. It's just Jack Kirby, and the main story is Elliot S. Magan. Just great. Mobius has a pinup in here. I'll just crack this open. I got to show you the Mobius part. The back cover, Frank Miller. This isn't really about Batman 400, but if you're not familiar with this Superman book, you gotta check it out. There's the Kirby. Crazy white bearded Superman. It's an amazing story. See, this is an interesting story by Frank Miller. Simonson. This is a great issue. Track it down. There's the Mobius piece. The Steranko interior art as well. Just some great. This is a great issue. Even if this one's pretty beat up, even if you got to find a beat up version of this comic, find it. Bill Sienkiewicz has something in here as well. Oh, there's Brian Bolland. Anyway, good issue. So why Batman 400 through 500 specifically? This is an idea that I had like going back 10 years ago at least, where I decided for whatever reason that, I had a lot of issues of Batman. I had a lot of issues around 400 through 500, and I decided I was going to go through discount bins and buy all the issues I didn't have. But I was limiting myself to only going through discount bins. So I never paid over more than $1 or 50 cents for any of the issues, except for maybe like a few, like maybe the death of Jason Todd or something like that. I maybe paid a little bit more. But anyway, so I had a lot of those, and I wanted to do like an article or something, or even like a Tumblr blog or something, where I just reviewed each issue, and I was going to call it like a Batman a day or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, so when I was thinking about how much I love YouTube, I watch a lot of YouTube, probably too much, and I was trying to think of an idea for something to talk about, and one of the ideas I had was this. So the thing that's interesting about Batman 400 through 500 is, unlike a lot of runs on comics, a lot of stuff happens. So a lot of great storylines, this one being literally the best Batman comic ever made. So this is the 4 issues of Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. It's if you know of a better Batman comic than these 4 issues, please let me know. So right away, right off the bat, you got this amazing story, and you've got the retelling of Jason Todd's origin, which I'll get into later. But because issue 400, one of the things it's known for is being the last appearance of the pre-crisis Jason Todd, which is, boy, that's getting into the weeds, but I'll talk about that later. So this 408, the new origin of Jason Todd. And then this is an issue I had as a kid. A lot of these I didn't have as a kid. I didn't have 400 as a kid, actually, but it wasn't in one of those 3-packs. But this issue was, and this issue is fantastic, and this cover is fantastic. It's actually also, so this cover is by Bill Sienkiewicz, and this cover is an amazing like jam. It's Jim Aparo's pencils with Sienkiewicz doing inks, which is just an amazing combination, because the thing that's great, most of this run is penciled by Jim Aparo, which I love. He's kind of, some people think of him as like a kind of a boring house style kind of an artist, and he wasn't like super exciting, but the thing about Aparo is, like, it just stands the test of time. Like, it might not have all the excitement as, like, something as interesting as Sienkiewicz or some of the, the other 90s stuff that it gets to, these crazy overdrawn things, but Aparo is just like simple, solid storytelling that just stands the test of time. It's just classic to me. So anyway, this issue is great. So this is where Nightwing meets up with Jason Todd and kind of passes the torch a bit. It's a great issue. And then there's this. I just wanted to show this. This cover had a huge impact on me. It's one of the first times I'd ever seen McFarlane's artwork. It's kind of a well-known cover. He didn't do the interiors, just the cover. But then, of course, there's this. These covers, too. Talk about covers that had an impact on me. Mignola's covers on this series, just amazing. And this story impacted Batman's storylines for decades. And Jason Todd, dead for quite a while until this issue comes along and brings him back from the dead. I haven't really read a lot of this stuff. This was another issue I actually picked up out of the discount bin, which is, I think I maybe paid $1, and it's worth quite a bit now. But anyway, and then eventually we get to Tim Drake taking over the position as Robin. So this is the first issue where he takes over, and this was around this issue, like late, or I guess mid 400s-ish, is when I was really getting into. I really liked Tim Drake, even though honestly, like when I started reading these early 400-ish issues, and I found out that like there was this new Robin named Jason for some reason, because that, it's my name. Super interested, didn't know what that was about. Wouldn't actually find out for years. All the ins and outs, like all the, like I was telling you about the new origin he had after Crisis and all that stuff. That's stuff I'd learn later, but anyway. So then towards the end, we get to the classic Nightfall storyline. So that's what's coming up in 400 through 500. A lot of amazing stories. And as far as writers go on this run from 400 to 500, there's a lot of great ones as well. starting with obviously Frank Miller, and then we get a run by Jim Starlin actually, and then there's some issues by John Byrne, and then some really cool issues by Marv Wolfman, and then a run by Peter Milligan, this Dark Knight, Dark City run with these Mignola covers. Those are awesome. And then Chuck Dixon does a run for a while, and then towards the end it goes back to Doug Minch that actually wrote 400. Alright, well, let's get this thing open and check it out. So, as you can see, we got Bill Sienkiewicz cover. There's an amazing lineup, on this issue. So it's one story told throughout the entire issue with just tons of different artists taking a few pages at a time. And this Bill Sienkiewicz cover is amazing. His artwork is just so, he's not like a normal comic book artist. You see, his artwork just has just crazy energy. It always makes an impact. It always, it just has more of a emotional feel over correct anatomy or anything like that. Just slaps you in the face. Always great covers. So Sienkiewicz, did a legendary run on New Mutants. Just great work there. I haven't read a ton of that, but I came to love his work when I read Electro Assassin. If you've never read that book, you got to pick it up. It's a trip. I did not know what I was getting into when I came across that series. And that's another series that I tracked down eventually over time, just out of discount bins. But he's done, tons of great covers. His cover work just always, stands out. And that's why you'd get someone like Sienkiewicz, just someone who can make a crazy, visually stunning artwork on a cover that grabs everybody's attention when they're looking at all the different comics that came out that month, like Batman 400. And this lineup here, in general, is just great. All these great artists. And so there's this introduction by Stephen King, and I remember hearing that Stephen King worked on this issue, and for some reason assumed maybe he wrote the issue, but no, it's just this introduction article where he talks about being a kid, and people would be like, who do you like, Superman or Batman? And he would always pick Batman. And it's kind of interesting. Nothing super important about it, but it's definitely an interesting article. So this first, I'm not even sure who this Steve Lytle? I don't know. I don't know who the first penciler is. Just kind of okay. So the storyline is, this might be the first time that I know of that this happened, that all of the criminals break out of Arkham Asylum at once. Which is funny because that's similar to what's, we're kind of starting with that and then ending with that, because that's one of the things that happens in 500 or towards that, where in Nightfall. But this is the first time I remember ever knowing of all the inmates of the asylum breaking out at once. And so alright, and so this, like I was saying before, this is the last appearance of Jason Todd in the pre-crisis version, where he wasn't so in the pre-crisis he was just a very similar character to Dick Grayson. He grew up in a circus, and Killer Croc actually killed his parents, and this would be the last appearance of him. So going forward, they redid his origin where he's kind of like a punk street kid, but this is the last issue where he's like the normal nice kid. Alright, so the first part of the story, people are getting kidnapped, they kidnap Bullock. They kidnapped Vicky Vale. And Vicky Vale's interesting. I was doing some research and realized she's from the 50s. I didn't know she first appeared in the 50s. I didn't know her character was that old. The first time I ever heard of her was in the Batman movie, of course. But anyway, and there's also another character. It's Alfred's daughter, Julia Pennyworth. I don't know. This is her last appearance as well, for whatever that's worth. Not a character I'm familiar with. But this is important. So this is getting to the Bill Sienkiewicz interior portion. And these are the best pages, I think. These are just great. It's just like his Ra's al Ghul, and sometimes I call him Roz out of deference to the people that actually call him that, but I've always called him Ra's more often because that's the first time I ever heard of the character was in the Batman animated series, and that's how they pronounced it, so that's what I still use. So anyway, so the story is Ra's al Ghul shows up, says, "Hey Batman, I'm the one who let everybody out of Arkham Asylum. I want you to either join me or pretty much die and be done with." Because in this issue, so it's supposed to be like Batman's anniversary of becoming Batman. And Ra's al Ghul is celebrating that by letting everyone escape and driving Batman crazy. This section is done by Art Adams, and also just an amazing artist. To me, he's always kind of like, I always thought of his artwork being kind of like similar to those Image guys like Jim Lee and even Rob Liefeld a little bit. But like if those guys were kind of better, better artists, I don't know. His artwork, I don't know. I don't mean to even diminish him that much because he's more amazing than that. But that's kind of the thought I had when I was younger. But anyway, this portion, the Art Adams portion, is great. This is another section by someone I'm not super familiar with. But so all the villains kind of go off in their separate little side missions of how to ruin Batman's day or whatever, and then Talia shows up and starts to help out. The story itself is kind of okay. The most interesting thing is seeing this one big story done by all these different storytellers. And you got Joe Kubert. I mean, just classic stuff. Like each little section, you know, even if they're short, they really speak to the artist's strengths and stuff. So Batman tracks everybody down, saves everybody. Nothing super interesting, but still a solid story. And so the Joker kind of goes off on his own and refuses to kind of like follow the plan, and instead of, part of the plan was just to like get money, like he was going to ransom somebody, I guess Bruce Wayne, I don't know, it's complicated, but he goes off, he's like, I don't care about the money, I just want to watch it all burn, kind of a thing. And that's kind of interesting. Kind of, you know, the direction the Joker goes in for a while. And so this is the other, probably the best pages, is the end of the story by Brian Bolland. So you pretty much, Batman saves everybody, tracks down Ra's al Ghul, and for whatever reason, Ra's al Ghul wants to go into the Lazarus pit. And I guess before this, it seemed, you know, he usually just goes in it when he's really near death or something. But he wants to go in it even though he's young and doing fine. And they're like, this doctor's like, you shouldn't do this. But he wants to do it anyway. And Batman, I mean, look at this. This Brian Bolland art is just fantastic stuff. Batman stops him, tosses Ra's into the Lazarus pit. Whole thing comes down, they run away. And the epilogue is like, they're trying to give Batman a cake, and a stalactite in the Batcave falls in it, and he's like, yeah, that's about right. That sums it all up. But anyway, so he just, you know, decides to keep on being Batman. That sort of thing. Decent story, not amazing. I wish I could have read this as a kid. I'm not sure what... It would have been a good introduction to a lot of these characters, like this crazy version of Clayface. You know, and some of these other characters I wouldn't have known, like Black Mask and a few others that I wouldn't have known until the cartoon, maybe. But anyway, so then there's a couple pinups. There's Mike Grell. He did an amazing run on Green Arrow, if you're not familiar. Bernie Wrightson, just some amazing. Steve Rude, amazing. And this is like the rest of the Stephen King letter part. But anyway, solid issue in the back. It's great. So they, you know, reproduced the cover with no title credits or anything on there. It's just beautiful example of Sienkiewicz artwork. and that is Batman 400. And what was going on with other DC books around this time? So the same month that Batman 400 came out, in Detective, there's this awesome issue that's written by Harlan Ellison, who just recently passed away. That's a really good Harvey Bullock story. And in Superman, around this time, what was happening was Superman was ending. This is the famous Alan Moore story that brought both Superman and Action Comics to an end because of this thing, Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all of DC continuity was being rewritten and a lot of stories were coming to an end. And so when Superman was relaunched in Man of Steel, it kind of retells the first meeting between Superman and Batman here, which actually will lead us to the next issue of Batman that I'll be talking about, because this is a Byrne cover, not Byrne interiors, but he kind of concludes this story in Batman 401. And like I was saying earlier, like this Sienkiewicz inking Aparo, I just watched this video where Bill was talking about this process, not of this cover, so like later after 500, Sienkiewicz actually starts inking Aparo's interior pencils on quite a few issues, and he talked about how he tells this great story of, so this is like later in Jim's life where, you know, his health is kind of affecting his artwork, and Bill's kind of brought in to ink him and kind of, you know, punch up his artwork a little bit because it's starting to slide, and it gets to a point where Sienkiewicz is kind of like doing so much of his interesting Sienkiewicz stuff that Aparo calls him up and says, "Hey, stop changing my stuff." It's an interesting story. I'll link it in the notes below to that YouTube interview. It's definitely worth checking it out. Okay, so I think what I'll do at the end of these videos is kind of like a, you know, so what? So what about this issue? Does this issue matter? Like, what's important about it? And pretty much, you know, the stuff I've touched on already on this issue is what's interesting about it. The lineup, this awesome cover. The thing that's most interesting about it, honestly, isn't the fact that it's an anniversary issue, or the fact that in the comic book it's supposed to be Batman's anniversary of becoming Batman, or the fact that it's Jason Todd's last pre-crisis appearance. None of that's super interesting. Seeing all the Rogues gallery together is pretty interesting, but honestly, the most interesting part about this particular issue is this crazy lineup of talent as far as the art goes, and just seeing all the different takes in one story. That's kind of the most interesting thing about it. But you know, since this is the first video, I thought I would also just talk about why does Batman matter in general? Like, what does Batman mean to me? And what I was thinking was, it's kind of simple. You know, Batman, the most interesting thing to me about Batman is that he took the tragedy of losing his parents and just turned it into like motivation to help people, which is kind of the way I look at Batman. That's what's interesting about him to me. A lot of people are, you know, think, you know, he's just some crazy psycho who dresses up like a bat, and, you know, obviously you'd have to be crazy. All that makes sense. I get all that. If you want to get into the weeds of Batman's psychology, like that, the way people do, that's fine. But to me, it's just simpler than that. Like, you know, he used a tragedy as motivation to help people. That's all I really need to think about. But also the other thing, and this issue does kind of touch on this, is the thing I think about with Batman is that he lost his family, and over time rebuilt his family, like made a new family, whether that's starting with Alfred and Leslie Tompkins and you know, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake. You know, that's kind of one of the things that the issues of 400 through 500 are about him rebuilding who he is. And then that's something that's affected my life. You know, when my parents got divorced when I was young, I lost my family unit as it was, and over time, you know, kind of rebuilt my own family. So that's something to think about a lot with Batman. Is, you know, I have so many different issues of Batman lying around. It's like, why has this character meant so much to me over time? I think things like that are why. Okay, so that wraps up this video. My plan is to also do like different little shorter series of videos sometimes. Like one, I'm going to do a little series called Big Treasure, where I go through some of my Big Treasury editions and do like quick reviews of them. Also, I plan on doing a little series called First Impressions, where I go through the first issues of some series. I'm going to start though with the first issues in chronological order of all the Image titles that launched the company, and talking a little bit about, you know, the effect that had on me growing up as an artist and as a reader, you know, and as just a collector of comics. Anyways, I'll probably, you know, there's a lot of these, and they've all meant different things to me over the years, and I'll talk a bit about that. And also, I'm going to do even a series on comics that I have that are actually now worth money, that are kind of surprising to me, or just ones that you know, it's just awesome that they're worth something. But just one about, you know, collecting in general, as far as having comics that are worth money, and whether or not that matters to me. It mostly doesn't, but I just think it's kind of interesting sometimes as well. Also, I'm going to do a series about, it's like a spotlight on indie comics, just talking about the different indie comics over the years that have had an impact on me or meant something. So I've got quite a few. I got an entire long box just of different early and even newer indie comics. But anyway, I'm also even going to be doing a short series on different trading cards and stuff, especially the Marvel Masterworks series and the Jim Lee's X-Men cards, and just the cards you would even get in Wizard and stuff like that, and the Marvel trading cards, all that stuff, even Star Trek cards, whatever, all the different stuff that I've collected. I might even talk a little bit about my toy collection, because I've got pretty extensive Batman collection. I even built a Bat Cave play set with my daughter to kind of display a lot of my Batman stuff. But anyways, so thanks for checking this out. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Share it on social media. That would help. That'd be awesome. All right. Thank you.